This was never merely a forgotten manuscript buried beneath dust and legend. It was presented as a threat, a text wrapped in the kind of danger that makes institutions uneasy and turns curiosity into fear. The claim surrounding it was never small, that within its pages rested a version of sacred history capable of unsettling one of the largest belief structures ever built. According to the story, when this work surfaced, rejection was not enough. Suppression followed, bans followed, silence followed. The name attached to this controversy was the Gospel of Barnabas, a text said to have vanished into shadow for centuries, while power moved carefully round it. And as resistance intensified, another writing carrying the same title allegedly appeared, a substitute placed into circulation, so the original question could be buried beneath confusion. Later discoveries were linked to places such as Turkey and Cyprus. Yet the versions associated with those findings were said to differ sharply from the one preserved in this narrative. That difference matters, because the issue was never just whether a manuscript existed. The real issue was which manuscript, whose voice, whose memory, whose theology. Today, 4 Gospels stand at the center of global Christianity: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yet the earliest centuries after Isa were not nearly so simple. Numerous gospel traditions circulated across communities. Some echoed one another, others contradicted one another completely. Barnabas belonged to that contested landscape. In certain accounts, the text attributed to him denied that Isa was the Son of God, denied that he died on the cross, and spoke of a prophet yet to come after him. That is not a minor variation. That is an earthquake beneath doctrine. Whenever a structure feels endangered by a rival memory, its response is rarely neutral. It minimizes, it buries, it reclassifies. It makes the dangerous voice appear unreliable, foreign, fabricated, or absurd. That pattern is at the heart of this story. The version widely known today exists in Italian, which opens an obvious problem. Barnabas lived in the 1st century. He did not speak Italian. He is most likely tied to Aramaic and perhaps Greek, not a later European tongue. So where is the parent text behind this supposed translation? No transparent answer settles that question. No publicly established original accompanies the version most people encounter. That gap alone creates room for doubt, distortion, and manipulation. Yet the intrigue deepens because some researchers and narrators insist the earliest form was not destroyed, only concealed, managed, and kept away from open scrutiny. Once that possibility enters the frame, the tale expands beyond an old manuscript into a chain of secret excavations, vanishing records, armed recoveries, political sensitivity, and deaths that some observers refuse to dismiss as coincidence. At the center of the maze stands Barnabas himself, not as a decorative name from religious tradition, but as a figure whose proximity to Isa gives his attributed testimony unusual. Known originally as Yusuf and linked to Cyprus, he came from a Jewish family associated with the tribe of Levi. Sources portray him as an early believer, a man of support, unity, and steadfastness, someone whose title, Barnabas, conveyed consolation and strength. He is remembered not as a distant theologian writing long after events, but as someone said to have lived in the same age, heard the message directly, and moved with the earliest community. That distinction separates him sharply from later gospel traditions. Because if a genuine text from Barnabas ever existed, it would not be another second-hand devotional record. It would be treated as direct witness material, a source of extraordinary consequence. The turning point in his story arrives where his road intersects with Paul, and from that moment the fault line widens into a civilizational divide. Paul would become one of the most influential architects of Christian theology. Yet Barnabas is cast in this narrative as the man who stood near the original teaching, while Paul gradually recast that teaching into a form more compatible with the intellectual and pagan environment of the Roman world. For a period, the two traveled together, preached together, and labored in the same mission field. Then the fracture came. According to this interpretation, the dispute was not over personality or method, but over identity itself, who Isa was, what his mission meant, and how his words should be understood. Barnabas is portrayed as preserving a pure monotheistic message, seeing Isa as the servant and messenger of the Lord, not divine, not a son in a theological sense, not a partner in a triune formula. Paul, shaped by the atmosphere of Tarsus, a major intellectual center steeped in philosophy, especially Stoic currents, is described as moving toward abstraction, system, and doctrinal reconstruction. Saul became Paul after the Damascus episode, an experience for which his own testimony remains the primary source. From there he wrote letters, founded communities, and laid foundations that later Christianity would adopt at scale. Barnabas, by contrast, returned to Cyprus and in many tellings paid with his life while trying to continue the message as he had received it. That contrast matters because history eventually rewarded one path and obscured the other. Paul's theological line rose into imperial legitimacy. Barnabas's memory remained honored, yet the book connected to his name was pushed into danger. Tradition says he was killed in Cyprus, cast aside, and secretly buried by loyal students near a Salamis, with a manuscript resting upon his chest. Centuries later, a dream reportedly came to Bishop Anthemius in the year 477, directing him to the burial place. The grave was opened, bones were found, and on the chest lay a handwritten gospel. Emperor Zeno was informed. The Church of Cyprus gained privileges, a monastery rose, and the manuscript passed onward through great ecclesiastical channels, until, according to the tale, it disappeared from public sight. What followed is one of the darkest elements of the entire account. Barnabas remained celebrated as a saint, yet the gospel tied to his body was banned, marginalized, and eventually treated as deadly material. In some retellings, even uttering his name in the wrong era invited execution. The pattern continued into later centuries, where councils and imperial policy shaped orthodoxy by selection and elimination. At Nicaea in 325, the question of Isa's identity became the battleground. Arius argued for the absolute oneness of God, and saw Isa as messenger, not deity. The opposing camp prevailed. From the perspective of this script tradition, that victory was less a discovery of truth than a state-backed reorganization of religion for imperial cohesion. 4 Gospels were elevated, others were condemned. Barnabas was later formally banned under Pope Damasus. Anonymous canonical texts written decades after Isa, with no preserved chains resembling Islamic hadith verification, became normative, while a text claiming revelation language for itself and aligning on key points with the Quran was cast out. That is why the context attributed to Barnabas remains explosive in this storyline. Isa is not the Son of God. He is not crucified. Judas is made to resemble him, and the coming of Ahmad is announced. Those themes move the text directly into the center of Muslim-Christian theological dispute. The intrigue then spills into modern claims: a discovery in southeastern Turkey in the 1980s, an Aramaic Syriac manuscript, state custody, secret translation work by Hamza Hojer, Vatican interest, suspicious erasures of testimony, an armed nighttime operation in Cyprus in 1996, a murdered journalist who kept asking what had been taken, a sealed excavation in Tarsus in 2016, rumors of Vatican coordinates, political visits, spontaneous denials before official questions, and a long chain of people who allegedly touched the story and then met intimidation obscurity. or death. Whether every detail survives scrutiny is a separate matter. What gives the legend its force is the repeated reaction. Hide it, redirect attention, replace the original with a controllable imitation. Label the topic fraudulent so serious inquiry collapses under ridicule. Yet the narrative refuses to die. And that is the new value hidden inside this old controversy. Perhaps the most dangerous thing in history is not a manuscript itself, but a memory that cannot be fully erased. Ban the pages, and the question survives. Burn the record, and the suspicion grows. Silence the witness, and the absent starts speaking louder than the testimony ever did. The Gospel of Barnabas, in this perspective, becomes more than a disputed book. It becomes a mirror, reflecting how power behaves when certainty feels threatened, and how suppressed ideas continue to move through conscience, rumor, scholarship, and restless human hunger for what was lost.